Somebody give me a thumbs up in the comments, let me know there's sound while I get Facebook back on board. Right, sounds on. Okay, let's start this again, shall we? Good morning, folks. As I say, I've been having some technical difficulties this morning. That's why the stream started a few seconds late. And it would appear I hadn't cured the technical problems. I do apologise. I'll stick myself in the naughty step. Okay. Right, as I was trying to explain, say, folks, what's in the press today is absolute, utter bollocks. And at the end of this stream, just before I put the Daily Star up, I will prove to you all that what is in the press today is utter bollocks. Okay, but numbers are starting to climb again, thank Christ. Morning, Sir Larry the Cat. Morning, Graham in Perth. Testing, class action. Aye, apparently it's working now. As I said, please accept my apology. I didn't know there was going to be these technical difficulties and glitches. I'm going to have to sort out the camera software or change the camera. Okay, folks, we'll get this underway because we're running a wee bit late. Facebook's back on board. Good morning, Lorna. Good morning, Melanie. I have lost a few off the stream who were here on. Morning, Jackie. Who were on YouTube, but hopefully they'll find their way back in again. All right, it's Indy Truck. Davey out the truck now at home in his office in Salisbury, North Lanarkshire, where, once again, after yesterday being a wee bit disappointing, it's a beautiful morning. Really, really warm. Sun split in the sky, blue skies, 15 degrees, no bad. And that's weather in Salisbury, North Lanarkshire. If you want to know what the weather's like where you are, look at your own bloody windy. Okay. Right, first up this morning, we have the Herald, and it goes on a complete lie, as does most of the papers today. I will stick it up. Starmer hails new EU deal that turns page on Brexit. Folks, I'm going to try and make this as clear as possible, and then I'll prove it when we get to the end. This is not a new deal, and what Starmer brought back was the very least the EU is willing to give. He could have went for rejoining the customs union. He could have went for free movement of people again. But the EU are only willing to go so far. And why is that? Because in the UK Parliament there's an arsonist sitting in the corner, and sitting next to him is another bunch of arsonists. So if Starmer had went too far, the next election 2029, if Reform went through, or Reform and Tory create a coalition, because the way Starmer's gone, Labour's finished, then the EU know that any advancements made with the Labour government would be reversed. But I can assure you folks that what he came back with and what the trade-off was a start. But it was as far as the EU were willing to go. No, what Starmer came back with, what Starmer won. It was as far as the EU were willing to go, because of Farage and because of Badenoch and because of the rise of the right here. Okay. But as I say, it is a start. But we'll get into it. The other thing is, as I say, and I'm going to repeat this repeatedly through this programme, this is not a new deal. It is tinkering round the edges of an existing deal. And as I say, we'll get to that at the end of the show, or near the end. Next up, we have a Scotsman. Let's see what nonsense it's got for us this morning, because it normally is nonsense. Here we go. Scots fishing industry fury as Starmer hails EU deal. It's not a deal. Betrayal claim, but agreement is welcomed by the salmon group. The salmon producers are welcoming it. Okay. But Scottish fishing industry fury as Starmer hails EU deal. It's interesting that this has been promoted as being new, a reset, all these sort of things. It's no such thing. It was a review, and the EU have allowed a bit of tweaking to suit themselves. Not to suit us, the people on this bedraggled island. It's not to suit us. It's to suit them. We have absolutely nothing that they want or need. Nothing. They can source their food within the bloc. They can source anything they need within the bloc. This was Starmer with his begging bowl is once again the sick man of Europe, like in the 70s, have to go chapping on European door and beg for access. That's the fucking truth of what we're seeing here. But it's funny the way the press like to spin these things. Little England's not to know that Westminster is weak. Little England has to have this idea that it is almighty. But what Starmer come back with, after months of negotiation, these negotiations started, remember, in January, folks, was the least and the most the EU were willing to give. So that's the Scotsman for you. Next up we have the right-wing loony rag, the Daily Fail. Let's see what it's got for us this morning. Starmer surrenders. Done up like a kipper, doesn't even begin to cover the PM sellout, Richard Littlejohn. The rush to throw in our lot with the stagnant EU is unfathomable, says Andrew Neil the Tory. Starmer surrenders. Sir Keir accused of Brexit betrayal as he caves in over fishing rights and leaves us subject to EU laws and courts while paying for the privilege. Well, that's what happens when you want to access the club but you're not a member. You pay the admission fee each time you pop in. But surrender. Starmer's done no such thing. The red lines are all there. No freedom of movement. Trade diversion. No access to the club. But we'll get to what he did come back with. And why what he came back with was what the EU was wanting to give him. The crumbs off the table. Right, next up we have their answer. As you know, I don't put their answer up, folks, but I'll tell you what it says. Their answer goes on, stop and search kids for knives. Ex-Justice Secretary calls for cops' powers in wake of stabbing. He demands action to prevent other youths dying like Caden. I'm going to sort that headline out for you in a wee second. Then I'm going to give some good advice to my friends in the Alba party. Okay. So let's sort the headline out first. Irrelevant, unconsequential, individual, rejected, resoundingly, three times by the Scottish public, demands. Now, either the Alba party are stupid or they've got a press problem. I tend to edge towards the first, the stupid. When the 1% demands of the 90%, you can be sure they are the stupid. When the 1% demands of the 99%, you can be sure they're stupid. And it's the reason why the Alba Party is getting no traction. They demand, they stamp their wee feet, say, pay attention to us, pay attention to us. We demand, we demand. What about politely asking 1%? Or what about helpful suggestions 1%? But no, it's we demand, we demand, we demand. I'll tell you what, Sheridan, McCaskill, McLenny, Regan, you can demand all you want. You're inconsequential. You haven't even made it into the consciousness of the Scottish people. That's because you turned them off. Your branding was all wrong. Your demands is know how to get about things in politics. And to highlight how inconsequential and how absolutely inconsequential you are. A snake oil salesman from England is actually making headway in Scotland, whereas you, McCaskill, you, Reagan, you, Sheridan, you, McElhenney, and Angus Brendan McNeil's just joined as the referee, as the four of them fight it out. You're wasting your fucking breath, demanding. Try polite suggestion. And if it is a polite suggestion, Mr. McCaskill has been, maybe you need to talk to the press about how they're portraying you. But as I happen to know these people, I happen to know that demand is exactly right. The record hasn't made it up. But the Alba Party need to grow up. The 1% do not make demands of the 99%. That's not how it fucking works. And if you want to make it into the public consciousness, rebrand the bloody party and start acting properly. Stop fighting with each other. Stop taking each other to court. And maybe put out a policy prospectus that people might be fucking interested in. Henry McLeish, the has-been, 3 times rejected by the Scottish public, makes demand. Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? They don't learn, do they? To demand our attention, they demand that we do what they say. We demand that you fuck off into the wilderness where you belong after this next election. There's not a single one amongst you that's fucking electable. Some of them are friends to you. Eva's a lovely woman. Fiona's a lovely woman. But they're not electable. They're just not electable. The name of the party was all wrong. And how they went about trying to break into this public consciousness was all wrong. By demanding that we give them their vote. We give them our vote. We demand that you give us your second vote. We demand that you fuck off back into oblivion where you came from. You've no right to fucking demand. You haven't even made it onto the public consciousness. Pop back and stay out of here. When most of these fucking has-beens are dead and you maybe have a chance. Right, let's go. Let's see what the Times has got for us. That's enough of the Alba Party. I've given them too much fucking time. They don't warrant it. They're not worthy of it. A lot of good people in the Alba Party. Sorry, none of them are at the fucking top. Right, the Times has Starmer hails Brexit reset as new era in EU relations. It's no, folks. I have to be 100% blunt and honest and to tell you that everything I've looked at this morning to the European side makes it clear. That was about as far as they wanted to go, and the only thing they really needed for the UK was fish. And the wee bit they gave, including defence, well, defence they also have a need because of mad Vlad at the other end of the continent. So the EU go to want fish and access to British arms companies. Apart from that, very little in it actually. And from the EU point of view, if you go to the European side and read their press, you'll get to find out that Starmer was at the table for January with his diplomats with a begging bowl out. Right, let's move on. Oh, by the way, Trump dangles trade carrot and phone call to end Ukraine war. And he also then tell Vlad, you need to sort it out yourself. You know what it will take to settle the deal. I'm out. Yeah, London. What's the Telegraph got for us? Well, same as the rest of them. Fucking nonsense. In fact, this one's right out there. Kiss goodbye to Brexit. We wish. But there's no going back. There's only a wee bit of tweaking round the edges and only tweaking that suits the European market. No suits the UK. Get this into your heads, folks. The UK is in a very weak position here. And Starmer went with a begging bowl in January. And yesterday, minimalistic tweak to the existing deal is what they came up with. So you're not kissing Brexit goodbye. The Labour Party's no intention of taking us back into the EU. And Putin will get a big trade deal if he ends the war, Trump suggests. I'm not surprised Trump suggests he's fucking desperate. The American economy is in free fall. The rest of the world took one look at Trump and went, get it up ye. The only group on the planet to acquiesce to the orange man baby is the guy you see sucking up to the EU in that picture. The rest of the world stood up to the man baby. This one kissed his arse. And why is that? Because the UK is even fucking weaker than the US. And the US is on its fucking uppers. The rest of the world doesn't want to trade with the US anymore, and they don't want to allow the US to play bully in the schoolyard anymore. In fact, you've got to be proud of the planet for stoning up to the man baby, with the exception, of course, of Westminster. Right. The National has, let's see what nonsense is in the National this morning. Sometimes I worry about this fucking publication. UK told us nothing about what's coming in deal with EU, says Angus Robertson. The guy that's supposed to liaise with the UK government. He was cut out. So was Wales. So was Northern Ireland. Labour Brexit reset, a horror show for Scottish fishermen, and relationship with Westminster deteriorating fast, says Swinney. Deteriorating, says Swinney. Fucking deteriorating. John, I don't know where you live, or that fucking idiot Angus. What? The rest of us know that devolution died in October 2018 when they dismissed the Sewell Convention and overruled and started legislating without the consent of the Scottish people or the Scottish Parliament, who are the Scottish people's elected representatives. Devolution's been over for 7 fucking years, and these muppets hadn't noticed. Wow. And folks, just in case you want to look it up, the first time the Sewell Convention was ignored was when they put through the passing of Brexit in 2018. It was then further ignored when Boris Johnson got the TCA. It was then further ignored when it came to the Internal Market Bill. If these idiots didn't get that devolution died in October 2018, we have a big problem with our politicians, people. DJ Marcy Moo, I understand that democracy died in the UK long before then. It never actually existed here. It was veneer. But I'm talking about devolution. I'm not talking about democracy. Devolution died in October 2018. And you can look that up. That was the first time the Sewell Convention was overridden and ignored. And I'll tell you, it's been done 2020, 2022. In fact, it's been done numerous times. There's even went as far as issuing Section 35 orders to strike down Scots law. Right, what else is the national vote? Why did I take that down? Scotland is not a partner in a union. Top legal expert says 1707 Acts were takeover rather than merger, and Scotland was absorbed into England. This fucking nutcase must be a unionist, because he's the only one I've ever seen make that description when it comes to the treaty and the acts of union. Well, the treaty of union anyway, the acts might fucking be a wee bit different. But there's plenty of top legal experts out there that would counter what this top legal expert has to say. Fuck's sake. No doubt it was an English top legal expert. You're right, DJ Marcy Moo. Devolution has never been respected, but it ended in 2018. Right, let's move on. The eye has. Britain wins food and defence deal after fishing climb down with future clash on visas for under 30s. Now, folks, I'm going to translate that for you into actual facts. Britain wins fuck all. EU gives a little on food and defence deals after getting the fishing deal it wanted. There is no future clash on visas for under 30s because the EU doesn't need to send us their under 30s, and their under 30s don't need to come here because, including those in the Nordic countries that are not members of the EU youth still have 28 countries to go and learn and study and work in. If there is going to be a clash, it's going to be for the UK side as it clashes on the side that it's begging for, asking for visas for under. Can we get your under 30s? Can we get your under 30s? Why? Because agriculture's on its arse and the food processing sector's on its arse. We needed these young people to work in these sectors. The EU doesn't need young people for the UK. We need young people for the EU. Farming output's down 20% because there's nobody to pick the fucking crops. These kids for the EU were doing that in summer jobs and making money to take back for their studies. There's no clash on visas for under 30s. It's a matter of whether the EU wants to allow UK jobs back into their borders. And looking at what's happening here, I doubt it. See that one done? A couple left to go. Next up, folks, we have The Guardian. Let's see what nonsense The Guardian's go for. This one seems to be getting more and more prevalent here in Scotland for some fucking reason, the newspaper review. EU deal puts Britain back on world stage, says Starmer. Not fucking Disney. It actually shows its weakness even more. Because when you see the reports for the EU side, they're all fucking laughing at Brexit Britain with its begging bowl. The same way they were laughing 2 weeks ago, or last week, with Starmer and the big orange man baby. Known fine well that Starmer was at the table begging for agri food access to the EU while permitting agri-food access to the US. Fucking nonsense. And we'll get to that when we get to proving that this isn't a new deal, and then we'll have a wee look at some of what's in the deal. We're still waiting a lot of the fucking small print coming out. Okay, the UK back in the world stage. It just showed the UK to be even fucking weaker than what it was. This is what we talk about, spin and nonsense and lies in the press, folks. It doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist to work out the reality of these islands at this point in time, thanks to successive fucking idiots voted into power by a nation that's been in intellectual decline since the introduction of tuition fees. The moral decline started before that, but the intellectual decline started with the introduction of tuition fees. Fortunately, we're all old enough to have been around to fucking watch it happen. And as a long distance truck driver, or as a truck driver, not so much long distance, but a UK based truck driver travelling into England, you could see the intellectual decline at your delivery points, where you would have to explain to some fucking idiot what their job was. As I say, this is what we talk about when we talk about fucking intellectual decline. People are buying this shit in England. They don't have the way we thought we'd go and have a look to see what the Europeans are saying. The Europeans are rubbing their horns. Access to UK defence, access to UK fish, and we gave the UK fucking 2 fingers. Brilliant. So that's the Guardian. Nonsense. They say, but people buy this pish because of the intellectual decline in England. And that came with the introduction of tuition fees. And it's been a slow thing ever since. Now I'll take Guardian down. We'll put the metro up and then we'll go about proving that this isn't a new deal. Okay. Well, Charlie Cat is living the dream. Charlie Cat is living the dream, Mark. Right, let's put a metro up, see what nonsense is in the metro this morning. And then we'll put up what AI has got to say about the TCA. And then, if you want, I'll even go further and put up a government website. But I'm sure AI will do for you. Right. Metro.co.uk. Starmer hails EU deal as opponents take aim. Brexit battle 2 begins. Not fucking Disney. Not Disney. Nobody's suggesting a referendum. The papers are lining themselves up to be able to sell a few rags for the next week or two. There'll be some full fox rage from some right-wing politicians. The Blue, Tories and Reform. Remember, Starmer's a right-wing politician. So is McSweeney's a right-wing nutter and he's Starmer's advisor. But there's no Brexit battle 2 beginning. There isn't. Starmer's had his red lines and he stuck to them, even though they were red lines that the EU weren't interested in crossing anyway. EU don't want them back in the customs union. EU don't want them back in the club. What would be the fucking point when you've got a couple of arsonists sitting in that parliament wanting to fucking end the situation all over again? Right, Metro done. Okay, time to prove to you that this isn't a new deal. Okay. Here we go. Changes to the UK TCA agreement with the EU. The UK and EU have recently agreed to several changes to the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, including streamlining food and drink trade, improving energy cooperation, and enhancing security and defence cooperation. These changes aim to challenge aimed to address challenges arising from the UK's exit from the EU and to strengthen the overall relationships. So the actual terminology being used there lets you know, folks, that it is still the deal that was negotiated by Lord Frost, David Frost the half-wit, the knuckle dragger, the old school tie idiot. And these are just tweaks to it, and as I say, these are tweaks that suited the EU. There are things that the EU wanted and the EU got. Changes to the supply of food from the UK into the EU. A new sanitary and phytosanitary agreement will reduce red tape and remove some, look at the wording carefully, some routine checks on animal and plant products. Notice how David and I were highlighting some yesterday. That's because they know that the UK has just opened up to the American agri-food industry, and the EU don't want that shite in. So there may be a wee bit less checks and things that you can prove come from the UK, like we have a passport system for the animals that are raised here. So it might be easier to get burgers and sausages into the EU. But that's about it. Checks will remain on almost all products who have counterparts coming in for the US agri-food industry. Energy cooperation, linking the UK and EU's emissions trading systems will improve the UK's. Getting back into the EU trading system will certainly bring energy bills down. Starmer could well have pulled a coup here. But we know that the EU want access to Scottish renewable energy and to Scottish oil and gas. So once again, it was something the EU wanted. Security and defence. A new security and defence partnership will enhance cooperation in areas like non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, arms control, and cyber security. And British arms companies will get access to research and research funds. Fishing. Rolled out for 12 years. The fishermen get a crap deal to start with. They've still got a crap deal. Other changes. The agreement also includes provisions for greater cooperation on areas like youth mobility at fucking Disney. The EU knocked them flat. We keep getting this idea that it's the EU that's asking us to allow their youth to get back here. So no. We're desperate to get their youth back here. We need the fucking people to work in the fields, to work in the agri-foods industry. Rules of origin. The TCA includes rules of origin to ensure that goods qualities for preferential tariff treatment. Well, you know, when it comes to rules of origin, even the Tories realised that they were going to have to stay aligned. That's why there hasn't been a bonfire of red tape, as Jacob Rees-Mogg called it. And the UK-EU trade deficit. The UK continues to have a trade deficit with the EU. That's because we need 97 billion quid's worth of stuff off them each year just to fucking eat and to get run about. Because there's no car companies in the UK producing cars. And the ones that are here are owned out with these lands. But that goes for the same for the water industry, the electricity, the fucking lot. It's all been set off. Economic growth, impact the changes will make. Well, will improve economic growth. The EU have been gracious enough to allow us a wee bit better access. It will give a wee bit more confidence to businesses. It hasn't fostered any stronger relationships except for in the area of defence. But here also on the UK government website, PM secures new agreement with EU to benefit British people. Lie. AI's got it right. And once it's bad news when you get the Westminster Library spinning it like that. Absolutely outrageous. But the truth is, there you go, the UK and the EU have recently agreed several changes to the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. Alright, so as I say to you, this is not a new deal, it's tweaking of an existing deal. That's all it is. That's all it was ever going to be. Now, as we stated yesterday, and as I stated yesterday morning, when Bojo the Clown signed Lord Frost's bad deal, it was written in that there would be a review in 4 years, 2025. We left on the 31st of January 2021 officially. And in January 2025, they started to look at it to see what was working and what wasn't. And what happened yesterday and since January, or sorry, start of February, is that the EU have had a look at what the UK has, cherry picked what it wanted, given very little in return. And what little they have given, you get to pay for it. Because when you leave the club, your annual membership doesn't work anymore. You've got to pay every time you get in the fucking door. So, the notion that this is a new deal. But to be fair, it is an improvement in what we had. It will make things slightly easier. And it might even be a step towards getting there. I don't see what legend we've got this morning. Oh, it's Madam Director. Say hello to the audience, Madam Director. Right, I'm just heading down, okay?
Okay, getting it in reception.
Right, okay.
Right, what you choose?
Whatever you choose. She doesn't know. Yeah, she doesn't know you guys are listening. Right, I need to get the star up so I can get to hell. Because I'm taking Sarah to the doctors. I've got to pick her up at 25 past. So let's put the star up. Just as well she only works 10 minutes away. The star has Bozo Kia, Orange Ball Chewing Brussels Gimp. PM's in a tight spot. I don't think so. The papers will make hay with this for a couple of weeks and we'll all go on with it. What a lot of fucking nonsense. They say, folks, but remember, all this piss you're seeing in the press about new deals and new way forward and all that shit, it's nonsense. This was a review which was meant to happen. It was written into the original TCA, and what we have seen is minimal tweaking. And I mean minimal tweaking of the TCA to suit the EU and throw a couple of scraps off the table to the UK. So, as I said to you, lies and nonsense in the papers today, and the evidence at the end. It's still the same agreement, it's just been tweaked. So all this new deal, nonsense. But it shows you how propaganda works. Look after yourself, we're back tomorrow morning to do it all again. Bye for now.